The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure built by civilizations far older than humanity. Inside its grand hall, representatives from 247 species gathered under lights that mimicked their home stars. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some stood on legs, others floated in containment fields. They had come together to discuss trade routes, mining rights, and the endless politics of a galaxy that had known peace for 3,000 years. Ambassador Jiwan Park walked through the entrance corridor with steady steps. His dark suit was simple compared to the elaborate robes and armor worn by other delegates. Behind him, Captain Minho Choi and Counselor Hanyul Kim followed at a respectful distance. Minho's hand rested near his sidearm, though weapons were supposedly forbidden in the chamber. Hanyul carried a data tablet filled with negotiation points and compromise offers. Humans had been part of the Galactic Council for 15 years. 15 short years among species that measured their histories in millennia. Earth's representatives had learned quickly that patience was essential. The galaxy moved slowly, and young species that pushed too hard were dismissed as reckless children. Jiwan had been patient. For 3 years, he had attended these sessions, always polite, always diplomatic. Even when the Scan Empire began sending military ships near human colony borders, he had filed formal complaints rather than threats. Even when Stan traders undercut human merchants with suspiciously cheap goods, he had requested investigations rather than imposing sanctions. The other species watched humanity carefully. They saw a race that avoided conflict, that preferred talking to fighting, that seemed almost afraid of war. To some, this was admirable. To others, particularly the Scan, it was weakness. General Vrothkar dominated the Scan delegation area. He stood over 7 feet tall, his reptilian body covered in dark green scales that looked like natural armor. His yellow eyes held no warmth, only the cold calculation of a predator. Unlike the Scan diplomats who at least pretended civility, Vrothkar made no secret of his contempt for species he considered inferior. The session began with standard formalities. A floating orb translated speeches into every language simultaneously. Minor trade disputes were resolved. Border adjustments were approved. Then came the matter Jiwan had been waiting for. The arbitrator, a crystalline being whose voice chimed like bells, announced the next topic. The Scan Empire had formally requested mining rights to asteroid fields in the Kepler Belt, an area that human colonists had been developing for 5 years. The fields contained rare minerals essential for advanced technology. G1 stood when called upon. His voice was calm and clear. He presented Earth's position with facts and legal precedent. Human colonists had filed proper claims. They had invested resources. They had followed every council regulation. The asteroid fields were legally human territory. The Scan Diplomat responded with a long speech about ancient claims and superior needs. Jiwan countered each point with documentation. Back and forth they went, civilized and proper, exactly how council business was supposed to proceed. Then General Vrothkar stood up. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Other delegates shifted uncomfortably. Vrothkar was not supposed to speak. He was military, not diplomatic staff. But no one challenged him as he stepped forward, his clawed feet clicking on the polished floor. His voice came out like gravel scraping metal. The translation orb struggled to capture his contempt. He spoke of humanity's brief time in the galaxy. He mocked their small military. He laughed at their reluctance to fight. He called them soft mammals who would scatter like prey animals at the first sign of real danger. Jiwan listened without expression. Around the chamber, other species watched with varying degrees of discomfort. Some agreed with Vrothkar privately, but would never say so openly. Others found his rudeness distasteful. None intervened. When Vrothkar finished, Jiwan responded simply. The law was clear. The claims were valid. Earth would not surrender its territory based on insults and intimidation. The word struck Vrothkar like a physical blow. In Scan culture, refusing to submit after being challenged was a grave insult. His scales darkened with rage. The chamber grew silent as predators sensed danger. What happened next occurred in seconds, but would be replayed across the galaxy for years. Hrothgar crossed the distance between them in 3 powerful strides. Jiwan had just enough time to turn before the general's massive legs swung up and crashed into his face. The kick lifted Jiwan off his feet and sent him sprawling backward onto the hard floor. Blood sprayed from his nose and mouth. His head cracked against the ground. Minho shouted and reached for his weapon, but Haniel grabbed his arm. They both rushed to Jiwan's side, but the ambassador was still conscious, still aware. Through the pain and shock, Jiwan raised one hand. His meaning was clear. Stand down. The Stan delegation laughed. To them, this was how disputes were settled. Physical dominance established hierarchy. The weak submitted to the strong. It was natural law. Other delegates sat frozen. Some species found the violence shocking, but council rules forbade interfering in disputes between members. The crystalline arbitrator's light flickered with distress but made no move to help. This was technically an internal matter between the Scan and humans. Hrothgar stood over Jiwan's bleeding form and spoke in his harsh voice. The humans would withdraw their claim. They would recognize Stan's superiority, or more violence would follow. He had proven they could not resist. He had exposed their weakness before the entire galaxy. G1 slowly pushed himself up to his knees. Blood ran down his face and dripped onto his ruined suit. His left eye was already swelling shut. His nose was clearly broken, but his remaining eye focused on the recording devices positioned. Throughout the chamber, every council session was recorded. Every moment captured for the historical archives. Jiwan knew that this video would reach Earth. He knew that billions of humans would see what had been done to their representative. He knew what would follow. With enormous effort, Jiwan got to his feet. He swayed but remained standing. Minho and Haniel supported him on either side. The ambassador looked directly at the nearest camera and spoke. His voice was thick with blood but perfectly clear. Record this moment. Send it to Earth. Tell them everything that happened here. Tell them who did this and why. Then he looked at Hrothgar. The general expected to see fear or submission in the human's eyes. Instead, he saw something he did not recognize. Something patient and terrible. You have made a mistake, Jiwan said quietly. You will understand soon. The Scan delegation laughed again. The session was adjourned. Delegates filed out, most trying not to look at the blood on the floor. Within hours, official reports would be filed, and the council would move on to other matters. Most species considered the issue settled. The humans had been put in their place. Only Haniel and Minho understood the truth as they helped Jiwan to the medical bay. They had seen Earth's classified military files. They knew what humanity was capable of when provoked. They knew that Hrothgar had not won anything today. He had started a war. The message reached Earth in less than 2 hours. Quantum communication arrays transmitted the video across light years instantly, and within minutes every screen on every human world displayed the same horrific image. Ambassador Jiwan Park, humanity's voice to the galaxy, being kicked in the face by an alien general while the Galactic Council watched and did nothing. President Doyun Lee was in his Geneva office when his security chief burst through the door without knocking. The president looked up from his paperwork, ready to complain about the interruption, but the expression on the guard's face stopped him. Without a word, the chief turned on the wall display. Doyan watched the video 3 times. Each viewing made his hands grip his desk harder. By the 3rd replay, his knuckles were white. He pressed the emergency button that would summon his entire cabinet and military leadership. Then he watched the video a 4th time. Across Earth, the reaction was immediate and overwhelming. On every continent, in every city, people stopped what they were doing to watch. The video played in Times Square in Tokyo, in Mumbai and Moscow, in Sao Paulo and Sydney. It played on Mars colonies where humans had carved cities from red rock. It played on orbital stations and distant mining outposts. Everywhere humans lived, they saw what had been done to their ambassador. The response was not panic or fear. It was rage. Cold, focused, calculating rage. Admiral Haijin Sung was already in the command center when the president's summons arrived. She had seen the video within 5 minutes of its arrival and immediately begun preliminary mobilization orders. By the time the cabinet assembled, human military forces across 3 solar systems were already moving to readiness positions. The emergency meeting took place in a bunker, beneath Geneva, in a room designed to survive nuclear war. President Lee sat at the head of the table. To his right was Admiral Song, her uniform crisp and her expression harder than steel. To his left sat General Taiyang Park, commander of ground forces and Jawan's younger brother. His face showed no emotion, but everyone in the room could feel the fury radiating from him. Dr. Soman Kang, the chief of xenological studies, pulled up holographic displays of the Scan Empire. She had spent 15 years studying alien cultures, learning how they thought, how they fought, how they negotiated. Now all that research would serve a different purpose. They don't understand us, she began without preamble. The Stan judged strength by willingness to use violence. They saw our diplomacy as cowardice. They saw our patience as weakness. Every time we chose talking over fighting, they became more convinced we were prey animals. General Taiyang spoke for the first time. His voice was level and controlled. My brother chose peace because Earth asked him to. He absorbed their insults because we told him to be patient. He followed our strategy perfectly. He paused, his jaw tightening. And they kicked him in the face for it. President Lee looked around the table. I need options. All of them. Admiral Sung activated another display. It showed ship deployments, weapon systems, and tactical scenarios. We have been preparing for this possibility since we joined the Council. Every diplomatic setback, every insult, every encroachment on our territory, we documented it all. We studied their military, their tactics, their weaknesses. We built ships they have never seen. We developed weapons they don't know exist. She pulled up classified footage. Sleek warships performing maneuvers that would be impossible for scanned vessels. Marines training in environments that would kill most alien species. Weapons tests that showed humanity's technological advancement far exceeded what they had revealed to the Council. For 15 years we have been underestimated, Admiral Sung continued. We let them think we were weak. We hid our true capabilities. We prepared for the day when patience would no longer be enough. She looked directly at the president. That day has arrived? Dr. Kang added her analysis. The Stan Empire has 300 star systems and a military force of approximately 40 million soldiers. They have been the dominant military power in their sector for 500 years. They are arrogant, confident, and completely unprepared for us. Why unprepared? The president asked. Because they have never fought humans at war, she replied. They know us only through 15 years of diplomatic contact. They have never seen what we are truly capable of. They think our history of world wars and conflicts is evidence of primitive barbarism. They don't realize it made us very, very good at fighting. General Taiyang brought up Earth's military readiness reports. We have 6 million active military personnel and another 20 million trained reserves. Our technology is adapted from studying every species in the Council. We took their best ideas and improved them. Our ships are faster. Our weapons are more accurate. Our soldiers are more adaptable. President Lee listened to every report, every statistic, every tactical assessment. Then he asked the only question that mattered. Can we win? Admiral Song answered without hesitation. Yes, decisively. Casualties? Theirs will be heavy. Ours will be minimized. We have the element of surprise, technological advantage, and superior strategy. They expect us to file a complaint with the Council. They expect angry words and diplomatic protests. They do not expect war. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what decision was being made. Humanity had avoided galactic conflict for 15 years. They had built a reputation as peaceful, reasonable, civilized. One decision would change everything. President Lee looked at the frozen image of Ji-won on the display. Blood on his face. The scan general standing over him. The Council doing nothing. Draft a formal withdrawal from the Galactic Council, he said quietly. Prepare a declaration of war against the Scan Empire. Give them 72 hours to surrender General Vrathkar for trial. If they refuse, we strike with everything we have. General Taiyang stood. I want to lead the ground forces personally. The president nodded. Approved. Bring your brother Justice? Admiral Soong began issuing orders through her command tablet. Across human space, ships that had been waiting for years began moving towards Ctan territory. Marines boarded assault carriers. Weapons were armed. Pilots ran final checks on fighters and bombers. 6 hours after the assault on Jiwan, President Lee addressed the United Human Assembly. Every human alive watched the broadcast. His speech was short and direct. He showed the video one more time. Then he spoke words that would be remembered for generations. They have mistaken our patience for weakness. They have confused our desire for peace with inability to fight. They have assaulted our representative and laughed at our restraint. He paused, letting the anger in his voice come through clearly. They will learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. As of this moment, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We issue one demand to the Scan Empire: surrender General Vrathkar within 72 hours, or face the full military might of Earth and all her colonies. The broadcast ended. The countdown began. On the Stan homeworld, Emperor Drasken received the human ultimatum and laughed. His advisors laughed with him. The humans were bluffing. They had to be. Their tiny military could not possibly threaten the mighty Scan Empire. General Vrathkar was celebrated as a hero for putting the mammals in their place. He gave interviews describing how easily the human ambassador had fallen. He recommended that all human claims be rejected, their territories seized, their species taught proper respect. None of them noticed the human warships, already moving through space toward their borders. None of them detected the strike teams infiltrating their communication networks. None of them understood that humanity's diplomatic face had been a mask, and behind it was something ancient and terrible. 72 hours passed. The Scan sent no response except mockery and insults. They called humans toothless herbivores playing at war. They broadcast messages claiming humanity would run at the first sign of battle. Admiral Soong received confirmation that all human forces were in position. She looked at President Lee, who gave a single nod. The admiral opened a channel to every human ship, every marine, every soldier preparing for battle. Her words were simple: make them regret it. The war began. The first indication the Stan had that something was wrong came from their border monitoring stations. 3 separate outposts detected massive energy signatures appearing at the edge of their sensor range. Before the officers on duty could identify the sources, human warships emerged from faster-than-light travel and opened fire. Fleet. Admiral Jiho Nam commanded the attack from his flagship, the Righteous Fury. The ship was unlike anything the Stan had encountered. Its hull was dark and angular, designed to minimize sensor detection. Its weapons were positioned in unconventional clusters that allowed firing from multiple angles simultaneously. Its engines could accelerate and decelerate, faster than any Stan vessel could. Jiho watched his tactical display as 300. Human ships appeared across 3 different star systems in perfect synchronization. Years of planning had led to this moment. Every ship knew its target. Every crew had rehearsed their role hundreds of times. There would be no hesitation, no confusion, no mercy. All ships, Jiho said calmly into the fleet channel, execute primary strike pattern. Weapons free. The Battle of Kreshtar Station began 30 seconds. Later, Kreshtar was a massive military installation that housed 10,000 Scan soldiers and anchored their entire border defense network. Its shields could withstand sustained bombardment from traditional weapons. Its guns could destroy ships at extreme range. It had never fallen to enemy attack in 200 years of service. The Scan commander, General Viklas, was drinking fermented blood wine when the alarms began shrieking. He rushed to the command center, his scales still dark from sleep, and stared at the tactical display in confusion. Dozens of unknown ships surrounded the station. But they were not behaving like any military force he had ever encountered. Instead of forming traditional battle lines and exchanging long-range fire, the human ships were everywhere at once. They appeared and disappeared, using short-range faster-than-light jumps that the scan considered dangerously reckless. They fired from unexpected angles. They coordinated attacks with a precision that seemed impossible without telepathy. Captain Yunji SEO led her fighter squadron straight through the station's defensive perimeter. Her small craft was fast and maneuverable, designed specifically for close-quarters combat. Behind her, 39 other fighters followed in perfect formation, their pilots trusting her completely. The scanned defense turrets tracked the incoming fighters and opened fire. Plasma bolts filled space with deadly light. Traditional tactics said fighters should break formation and evade. Yunji did the opposite. "Tighten up," she commanded. "Maximum speed. Follow my lead." Her squadron compressed into a narrow wedge and accelerated directly into the incoming fire. At the last possible moment, Yunji triggered a coordinated maneuver they had practiced 10,000 times. All 40 fighters scattered in predetermined patterns, their paths calculated to exploit gaps in the turret-firing arcs. 30-7 fighters made it through. 3 were destroyed in balls of flame and debris. Yunji allowed herself 2 seconds of grief for the lost pilots, then focused on the target. "Launch torpedoes on my mark," she said. Her fighters had positioned themselves directly above the station's reactor cooling vents, an area that most species considered impossible to hit from outside the shields. The Skatan had never bothered to heavily defend it. 40 torpedoes launched simultaneously. 37 found their targets, penetrating deep into the station's infrastructure before detonating. The explosions cascaded through the cooling system, and within seconds the reactor began overheating on the Righteous Fury. Lieutenant Commander Junho Bei monitored the entire battle from his tactical station. His job was to see patterns the individual ship commanders might miss, to coordinate the chaos into a coherent strategy. He watched Yunji's attack succeed and immediately redirected 3 destroyers to exploit the opening. "Admiral, the station's shields are fluctuating," he reported. "Reactor damage is causing power distribution problems. Recommend concentrated fire on grid section 7. Juho nodded. "All heavy ships, target coordinates transmitted. Fire when ready." The human destroyers unleashed their main batteries. Unlike scan weapons that relied on plasma, human ships used magnetic acceleration to fire solid projectiles at incredible velocities. The rounds punched through the weakened shields and tore into the station's hull. General Viklas watched his command fall apart in real time. His ships could not keep up with the humans' erratic movements. His shields were failing. His reactor was approaching critical temperature. He had lost 6 ships already and damaged a dozen more. While the human fleet seemed barely scratched, he sent a priority message to the Scan military command. "Unknown enemy using unprecedented tactics. Request immediate reinforcements. We cannot hold." The response came back within minutes, but by then it was too late. The station's reactor exploded, breaking the massive structure in half. Escape pods began launching as the crew abandoned their posts. The human fleet could have destroyed them all easily but let them go. This was not about slaughter. It was about sending a message. In 2 other star systems, identical battles reached identical conclusions. 3 Scan military outposts destroyed or captured. Minimal human casualties. Perfect execution of a battle plan that had been refined for years. General Vrathkar received the reports in his headquarters and felt something unfamiliar crawl up his spine. Fear. The humans had struck with a speed and ferocity that contradicted everything he thought he knew about them. This was not the species that had absorbed insults for 15 years. This was something else entirely. He sent an emergency transmission to the Emperor. "The humans have revealed hidden military capability. Recommend defensive posture until we understand their full strength." Emperor Draskin read the message and threw his communication device across the throne room. "Defensive posture? Against prey animals? against mammals who had never won a single military engagement in Council history. Impossible. The generals must be exaggerating. One lucky strike did not make a military power. He composed a formal response ordering total mobilization of the scan fleet. They would crush this human rebellion with overwhelming force. They would show the galaxy what happened to species who challenged their betters, but even as he gave the orders, doubt crept into his thoughts. The reports from Kreshtar described tactics he had never seen before. The human ships did not fight with honor. They did not follow the established rules of warfare. They used deception and ambush and psychological manipulation. Admiral Jiho watched the last escape pods flee from Kreshtar's wreckage. He felt no joy in the victory, only grim satisfaction. This battle had been necessary, but he took no pleasure in killing. That was another thing the Stand did not understand about humans. They could be ruthlessly efficient in war without enjoying it. He opened a channel that would broadcast throughout Stan space. When he spoke, his voice was calm and professional, which somehow made his words more terrifying. This is Fleet Admiral Jiho Nam of Earth's United Defense Forces. 72 hours ago, you were given an opportunity to deliver General Vrothkar for trial. You chose to refuse with mockery and insults. Today you have seen the consequences of that choice. This is not revenge. This is justice. You may surrender the general at any time, and this war will end. Every hour you delay, we will take another of your systems. Every day you resist, more of your soldiers will die. We do not want to destroy you, but we will if necessary. Choose wisely. The broadcast ended. The human fleet began moving toward the next target, their formation perfect. Their purpose clear. In the Galactic Council chamber. Delegates from 247 species watched the battle footage in stunned silence. Many had to replay the videos multiple times to believe what they were seeing. The humans, those patient diplomats who had seemed almost pacifist, had just destroyed 3 military installations in coordinated strikes that demonstrated planning and capability far beyond what anyone had suspected. The crystalline arbitrator's light pulsed with agitation. We must intervene. This conflict could destabilize the entire sector. But no species volunteered to step between Earth and the Stan. Everyone had seen the video of Jiwan being assaulted. Everyone knew the Stan had refused the ultimatum. And now everyone had seen what humans were capable of when diplomacy failed. The galaxy was learning a lesson. It should have known already. Patience was not weakness. Silence was not surrender. And humanity, for all its talk of peace, remembered very well how to wage war. 3 weeks after the first strike, human forces had captured 15 scan star systems. What started as surgical strikes had evolved into a full military campaign that demonstrated the vast difference between species that talked about war and species that knew how to fight one. General Taiyang Park stood on the bridge of a troop transport approaching the planet Draskvar. Below, 3 million scanned civilians lived alongside 500,000 military personnel. The planet was a key logistics hub, and its capture would cripple the enemy's ability to resupply their fleets. Taiyang had promised his brother justice, and he intended to deliver it personally. Every system captured, every battle won, brought him closer to General Vrothkar. Intelligence reports confirmed the general was now retreating toward the Scan homeworld. His once mighty armada reduced to scattered remnants fleeing before the human advance. General, we have confirmation that civilian evacuation routes are clear, reported his aide. Major Sunjin Lee. Enemy military forces are concentrated in the northern continent's mountain range. Taiyang nodded. Begin landing operations. Remember your orders. Civilians are not targets. Anyone who surrenders is treated according to Earth's military code. Anyone who fights will be met with appropriate force. The transport shook as it entered the atmosphere. Through the viewports, Taiyang could see dozens of other ships descending in formation. Fighter craft screamed past, establishing air superiority. Orbital bombardment had already destroyed the planet's defensive satellites and anti-air installations. But human forces had deliberately avoided hitting civilian infrastructure. This precision shocked the Scan defenders. Their military doctrine involved total war, where civilian casualties were considered acceptable. The idea that an enemy would go out of their way to protect non-combatants was alien to them. The landing zones were hot. Scan troops had fortified positions in the mountains, using the terrain to their advantage. They expected the humans to attack directly, to throw soldiers at fixed defenses in costly frontal assaults. Instead, Tiang's forces landed in 3 separate locations and immediately split into small mobile units. They used the planet's weather patterns to mask their movements. They hacked into enemy communications to spread confusion and false information. They turned the Scan's own defensive positions against them by attacking from unexpected directions on the northern continent. Captain Young-ho Kim led his company through a canyon that the enemy had not bothered to defend. Their intelligence said it was impassable, filled with toxic gases that would kill most species. But human forces had brought specialized equipment, and their adaptability allowed them to turn the enemy's assumptions into advantages. "Contact front," someone called out. A Scan patrol had spotted them. The aliens raised their weapons. Confident in their superior size and strength, Young-ho's company did not give them time to fire. Precision shots from multiple angles dropped the enemy soldiers before they could react. Human weapons were designed for accuracy over firepower, and their soldiers trained to end fights quickly. The patrol leader survived long enough to send a warning. Within minutes, a full Scan battalion was moving to engage. They outnumbered the human company 10-1 and expected an easy victory. What they found instead was a carefully prepared kill zone. Young-ho had positioned his soldiers on the high ground with overlapping fields of fire and multiple fallback positions. When the Scan charged up the canyon, they ran into a wall of coordinated fire that cut their formation apart. The battle lasted 12 minutes. The Scan battalion was destroyed. Young-ho's company suffered 3 wounded and 0 dead. General Tiang monitored dozens of similar engagements across the planet. His forces were outnumbered but winning everywhere because they fought smarter. The Scan relied on strength and aggression. Humans relied on planning and adaptability. By the end of the second day, organized resistance on Draskvar had collapsed. The remaining Scan forces surrendered rather than face annihilation. Tiang established a military government that immediately began distributing food and medical supplies to civilians. Human medics treated injured Scan soldiers alongside their own wounded. This pattern repeated across every conquered world. Human forces fought fiercely but showed mercy to those who surrendered. They rebuilt destroyed infrastructure. They protected civilians. They proved that military superiority did not require cruelty. Back at the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Jiwan Park had recovered from his injuries. The scars on his face were still visible, a permanent reminder of the assault that had started this war. But he stood straight and spoke with quiet authority as he addressed the assembled delegates. Many species had expected humanity to leave the Council permanently after declaring war. Instead, Jiwan had returned to document everything that was happening. Every battle was recorded and transmitted. Every captured planet's treatment was documented. Every prisoner's fair treatment was verified by independent observers. "We did not want this war," Jiwan told the Council. "For 15 years, we absorbed insults. We accepted unfair trade deals. We filed complaints through proper channels when your military ships violated our borders. We followed every rule, met every standard, demonstrated every aspect of civilized behavior." He pulled up the video that had started everything. The delegates who had been there looked away in shame. Those who had not seen it before watched in horror. General Vrothkar believed that assaulting me would prove Scan superiority. Instead, he revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. Jiwan's voice remained calm, but his words carried weight. "We choose peace when possible because we understand the true cost of war. We have fought each other for thousands of years. We know how terrible combat can be. That knowledge makes us value peace, but it also makes us very, very good at war when we have no other choice." Counselor Yuna Oh, who had replaced Jiwan as humanity's primary council representative, added her own perspective. We have documented every engagement. Our forces have destroyed 18 scan military installations and captured 15 systems. Our casualties have been minimal. Their losses have been catastrophic. But we have not targeted civilians. We have not bombed cities. We have not committed the atrocities that the scan assumed we would. She pulled up footage from conquered worlds. Human soldiers distributing food. Medics treating scan wounded. Engineers rebuilding power stations. Children playing near human checkpoints without fear. This is what you failed to understand, Una said. We can be ruthlessly efficient in defeating our enemies while remaining humane in victory. These concepts are not contradictory. They are both part of who we are. Several neutral species began to reconsider their assumptions about humanity. The scan had seemed powerful because they were aggressive and violent. But watching the human campaign unfold revealed a different kind of power. The ability to fight with devastating effectiveness while maintaining moral principles was far more impressive than simple brutality, Emperor. Draskin watched the same broadcasts from his palace and felt his certainty crumble. His military advisors had assured him that the humans would collapse once they faced real opposition. Instead, they were systematically dismantling his empire with a precision that terrified him. General Hrothgar was summoned to the palace. He entered the throne room expecting to receive new orders for counterattack. Instead, the Emperor demanded answers. "You said they were weak," the Emperor hissed. "You said one show of force would break them." Hrothgar had no response. His scales had paled, a sign of stress among his species. They are not fighting with honor. They use deception and ambush. They strike from unexpected directions. They do not follow the proper rules of warfare. "There are no rules," the Emperor roared. "There is only victory or defeat, and we are losing." Reports came in hourly of new defeats. The human fleet had reached the core systems of the Scan Empire. Their advance had been inexorable, professional, and terrifying in its efficiency. Desperate, the Emperor reached out to allied species, calling in favors and demanding assistance. But no one came. The galaxy had watched the Scan assault a Diplomat and laugh about it. They had seen the humans offer a chance for peaceful resolution. They had witnessed the Empire's arrogant refusal. Now they watched humanity prosecute a war with such precision and restraint that even neutral observers had to admire it. Admiral Jiho's fleet entered the Scan home system and broadcast a final message. "General Hrothgar, you have 1 hour to surrender yourself for trial. After that, we will come for you. Your Emperor cannot protect you. Your military cannot stop us. Surrender now, and this war ends. Refuse, and we will take you by force." In his bunker beneath the palace, Hrothgar stared at the countdown timer. Pride warred with survival instinct. He was a general of the Scan Empire, a warrior of the dominant military power in this sector. Surrendering to prey animals would bring eternal shame, but refusing meant death. Not just his own, but possibly his entire species. The humans had demonstrated they could defeat the Scan military. They had also demonstrated they would not stop until their demands were met. With 15 minutes remaining, Hrothgar made his decision. He contacted the human fleet and agreed to surrender. General Hrothgar walked out of his bunker without weapons or armor. Above him, human ships filled the sky, their dark hulls blocking out the sun. Soldiers in powered armor surrounded him immediately, their weapons trained but not firing. A transport landed nearby, and a human officer stepped out. General Taiyang Park looked at the alien who had assaulted his brother. For weeks, he had imagined this moment. He had thought about revenge, about making Hrothgar feel the pain and humiliation Jiwan had experienced. But standing face to face with the defeated general, Taiyang felt only tired satisfaction. Justice did not require cruelty. "General Hrothgar," Taiyang said formally, "you are under arrest for assault on a diplomatic representative and for crimes committed during this war. You will be transported to Earth for trial. Do you understand?" Hrothgar's scales had turned pale gray, the color of shame among his people. He had expected execution or torture. Instead, these humans spoke of trials and procedures. Even in victory, they followed their rules. "I understand," he said quietly. The transport lifted off, carrying Vrathkar away from his homeworld for what would likely be the last time. Below, Emperor Draskin watched from his palace and knew his reign was effectively over. The Scan Empire would survive, but never again as the dominant power it had been. The human fleet established orbital positions around the Stan homeworld, but did not land troops or bombard cities. Admiral Jiho opened communication channels and transmitted terms for conditional surrender. The document was comprehensive but not deliberately cruel. The Stan would pay reparations, reduce their military to defensive levels only, and allow human observers to ensure compliance. But there would be no occupation, no subjugation, no revenge killings. Emperor Draskin read the terms 3 times, expecting to find hidden clauses that would enslave his people. Instead, he found exactly what the document claimed to be: conditions for ending the war with dignity intact. The humans could have demanded total surrender, could have seized Scan worlds as colonies, could have done to them what Vrathkar had wanted to do to humanity. They chose not to. With no real alternative, the Emperor signed the surrender agreement. The war that had started with a kick to a diplomat's face ended with a formal treaty. Ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. 3 months later, General Vrathkar stood trial in The Hague on Earth. The courtroom was open to observers from every species in the Galactic Council. Cameras recorded every moment for the historical archives. This would be the first time most alien species witnessed human justice in action. The prosecution presented its case with clinical precision. Videos showed the assault on Ambassador Jiwan. Documents proved that Vrathkar had exceeded his authority by attacking a diplomat. Evidence demonstrated that he had ordered attacks on civilian targets during the war. The case was overwhelming and irrefutable. Vrathkar's defense attorney was human, appointed by the court to ensure fair representation. She argued that her client had acted according to Stan cultural norms and had not understood human customs. She presented evidence of his military service and asked for mercy based on cultural misunderstanding. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the verdict was guilty on all charges. The judge, an elderly woman named Justice Mingji Choi, delivered the sentence. General Vrathkar, you have been found guilty of assault on a diplomatic representative and multiple violations of the laws of war. However, this court recognizes that some of your actions stemmed from cultural differences rather than malicious intent. You are sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 20 years, during which time you will undergo cultural education and rehabilitation. The sentence shocked many alien observers. They had expected execution or torture. Instead, they witnessed a legal process that balanced justice with mercy, that punished the guilty while acknowledging complexity and offering hope for redemption. Ambassador Jiwan Park attended the trial but did not testify. His presence was enough. When reporters asked him how he felt about the verdict, he said simply, "Justice has been served. Now we can move forward." The Stan Empire slowly rebuilt under the terms of the treaty. Human advisors helped restructure their military into a defensive force. Trade agreements were renegotiated on fair terms. Reparations were paid not as punishment but as acknowledgement of the costs of war. Emperor Draskin, to the surprise of many, became an advocate for the new relationship with humanity. In a speech to his people, he said, "We believe strength meant the willingness to hurt others. The humans taught us that true strength includes the wisdom to show mercy. We attacked them because we thought them weak. They defeated us because they were strong in ways we did not understand." The Galactic Council underwent significant reforms. The incident that had sparked the war led to new protocols for protecting diplomats and resolving disputes. Humanity, having demonstrated both military capability and moral leadership, was offered a permanent seat on the Council's Security Committee. They accepted but insisted on rotating the position with smaller species to ensure fair representation. 5 years after the war, the galaxy looked very different. Human colonies continued to expand, but now with genuine respect from other species. Trade flourished as humanity's technological innovations spread throughout Council space. The video of G1 being assaulted was now shown in diplomatic training programs as an example of what not to do. G1 himself had become the Council's chief mediator, a position created specifically for him. When disputes arose between species, they requested his involvement because both sides trusted him to be fair. The scar on his face, which he could have had removed with surgery, remained as a reminder that even the worst conflicts could lead to better understanding. General Taiyang retired from military service and took a position teaching strategy at Earth's War College. His lectures on the Stan campaign became legendary. "We won," he would tell students, "not because we were more brutal, but because we were more disciplined. Not because we enjoyed violence, but because we understood its proper application. Remember that the goal of war is not destruction. It is achieving peace on terms that prevent future wars." Admiral Haijin Sung remained as supreme commander, but oversaw a military that was increasingly focused on peacekeeping and disaster relief. The ships built for war now carried medical supplies to plague-stricken worlds and rescued stranded vessels from spatial anomalies. The galaxy learned that human military power could be a force for protection rather than conquest. In the maximum security facility where Vrathkar served his sentence, the former general had access to human literature, history, and philosophy. He spent years studying the species he had so badly underestimated. He read about their world wars, their struggles for peace, their long journey from tribal conflicts to global unity. One day, he requested a meeting with G1. To his surprise, the request was granted. They met in a plain conference room. G1's scar was still visible, a permanent mark of Vrathkar's moment of rage. The general, now much older and wiser, looked at the human he had once dismissed as weak. "I understand now," Vrathkar said quietly. "You were never weak. You were restraining something far more dangerous than I knew. I mistook your patience for inability. I confused your choice not to fight with inability to fight." Duan nodded slowly. "Many species make that mistake. They see our diplomatic efforts and think we are afraid of conflict. They do not realize that we understand war better than most, which is exactly why we try to avoid it. If you had responded with immediate violence when I struck you, the galaxy would have condemned you as barbaric," Vrathkar continued. "Instead, you gave us every chance to make things right. You followed your own laws and principles even when it would have been easier to simply destroy us." "That is what civilization means," Jawan replied. "Not the absence of the capacity for violence, but the discipline to use it only when necessary and to temper it with justice when it is required." They spoke for another hour, two former enemies finding unexpected common ground. When G1 left, Vrathkar returned to his cell and continued his studies. He had 20 years of imprisonment ahead of him, but he had found purpose in understanding the species that had defeated him on Earth. In the halls of the United Defense Command, a plaque hung on the wall with words that had become humanity's unofficial motto in the galaxy: "We sought peace and were thought weak. We prepared for war and were proven strong. We won with honor and earned respect." This is the human way. The galaxy would never again make the mistake of confusing human patience with human weakness. The story of General Vrathkar's attack on a diplomat and humanity's response became a legend told across thousands of worlds. It taught a lesson that no amount of peaceful negotiation had managed to communicate that the most dangerous species were not those who loved violence, but those who understood it well enough to avoid it until absolutely necessary. And when absolutely necessary came, those species were unstoppable. Humanity had not wanted to prove this point. They had hoped that their long history, their technological advancement, and their diplomatic efforts would speak for themselves. But in the end, sometimes the galaxy only learned through experience. Now, when disputes arose and tempers flared, negotiators from every species remembered what had happened when one general kicked one diplomat. They remembered the war that followed, the justice that concluded it, and the peace that emerged from the ashes. They remembered, and they chose their actions more carefully. The human experiment in galactic citizenship had succeeded, but not in the way anyone expected. They had earned their place not through submission to stronger powers, but by demonstrating that true strength included the wisdom to wield it responsibly. 5 years after the war, Ambassador Jiwon Park stood before the Galactic Council and delivered a speech that would be remembered for generations. His scarred face was calm, his voice measured, his message clear. We came to the galaxy seeking friendship and found suspicion. We offered peace and were met with contempt. We showed patience and were judged weak. But we never stopped believing that civilization means more than military might. Today we stand before you not as conquerors but as partners. The war we won was regrettable but necessary. The peace we built afterward is our true victory. Let our story be a lesson not about the power of violence, but about the strength required to use violence justly and build something better in its wake. The council chamber erupted in applause that lasted for 5 full minutes, and in a prison cell on Earth, General Vrathkar watched the broadcast, and finally understood what he had awakened when he kicked a human diplomat in the face. He had not humiliated a weak species. He had awakened a sleeping giant, and the galaxy was better for it.